All right, we're back and really appreciate you guys being with us today. And man, what a massive project this is. Jordan, I'm sorry, so you're Tiegs?
Tiegs, yes.
Yeah, nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And Bouten is, where's your headquarters? At Spokane?
It's headquarters in Spokane. We have an office in Tri-Cities. That's where I'm out of. We have people on this project from both offices down here.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And so I guess let's start talk about yourself. How did you get into this? How a part of this company and such?
Sure. So I grew up on a farm in Pasco, Washington, up in Tri-Cities. We did a lot of construction projects because we were a large farm operation, and so I kind of got into it from there. Went to school at Washington State, and after that I moved out to Seattle and worked for a general contractor in Seattle for about 8 years, and then decided me and my family wanted to move back closer to home, closer to family. So that's how I got hooked up with Bouten in the Tri-Cities, Bouten Construction, and started working on this project about in January last year. So some of the early work. So yeah.
And Elaine, your job is to you're the facilities coordinator, director. I don't know what that title exactly is, but if it has to do with facilities, you're the contact person. Yeah.
Yes.
And so, and you and I have talked a lot about, hospital facilities from time to time. And then also, kind of in ramping up for the marketing for this particular expansion. You and I have had a lot of conversation about kind of the ingrown problems of having an old facility that has been added onto and trying to adapt the spaces.
New technology.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and you were here with us in January. So, in September.
Yes.
So, I don't know, how's it going from your perspective? And then we'll kind of dive into the actual progress.
A lot of the things that could disrupt operation have now passed, and that was skirting all of the existing utilities, existing things that we had to move to put this on a footprint into our campus. So that was work that had the potential to be disruptive, and we've navigated that safely and kept never lost any going forward with patient care due to moving everything. We've moved every single utility. So
wow,
that's a lot of coordination with Jordan to make sure that happens and that we don't disrupt patient care. And so we're past most of that now, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I can't imagine the moment that you're like switching from one source to another.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
what could happen?
Here it goes. Yeah.
And some of it did, and we mitigated it quickly. And we made very sure that every time we moved, like electrical, that we could go back real quick if things weren't working.
Right.
Because we did move every single utility. So it all went pretty seamlessly. We had a few glitches, but nothing that affected patients. So
yeah, and I totally get that, because I mean, a lot of what we do is live. Nothing we do is as critical as as what you're talking about. But still, you have to have a plan for if something goes wrong.
We do. We sit down, and with his team, we sit down and we talk about every step. And even before we go with one, we will have a plan together, but we'll sit and talk with the house supervisor who's running the hospital medical side of it every day and say, okay, anything critical going on? Do you want us to hold? Do you want us to go? And then we get her blessing and we would go and make that change. And some of them were late at night. Some of them were, trying to schedule around busy times, but we never closed. So we never had a downtime where we could just say, let's do it on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because we're still there working.
Well, cool. Well, I forgot to show this video. This is only 45 seconds long, but it's this cool drone progression video. Take a look at this.
I think you have all 4 seasons in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like it.
Yep.
Yeah, and that'll be cool as it progresses. But man, what a massive project that is. So I did this drone video, but didn't really know. I had never programmed my drone to fly the same flight over and over again, and so that was kind of cool how that worked out. But I tell you what, let me add some slides here, and let's just kind of get through this. We'll kind of click through these. This looks like you guys are. Is this rerouting some of the power and stuff?
It is.
Yeah.
I'll let Jordan speak to this.
Yeah, that's part of it. A lot of this is going to be future emergency power for the expansion. So this is electrical duct bank that we're putting in around the back to the back side of the hospital for a future new generator.
Wow. Okay. And then we'll just click through these. And
some footing work going on there next to the existing hospital.
Yeah.
Using a pump truck there to pour some concrete.
Yeah. Now you guys had to create a road just to get the equipment in and out of there up the side. Yeah.
Yep. We did a lot of that. We cut a big road in the side of the hill. You can't quite see it in this picture, I don't think, but down next to the east wing there. And
then this is part of that humongous retaining wall. Is that what you call that?
Yep. Retaining wall, shoring wall.
Yeah.
Could use that interchangeably. That's a real beefy wall.
I'm sorry, we'll go back to that. Yeah.
Real beefy wall. It will be part of the foundation of the building as well. So that's pretty unique.
Okay.
Usually they're temporary in nature and then they get buried behind the structure, but this becomes part of the permanent structure for the building. So that's pretty unique.
And this is the last time we were here that those steel pilings, those are going down 60
right,
feet
yeah.
and then tied back in 100 and some feet back vertical back into the hill. So it's solid.
Yeah. It looks like our slides got out of order. So I thought we had them in order, but so these are, so this is still the wall. So these, and you guys are building this and those are timbers, right? That are.
Yeah. Between them is really just temporary. We call it legging.
Okay.
It's 6x6 timbers, pressure treated timbers. They're just there to hold the earth back until we pour. The whole face of this gets a concrete wall.
Oh, I
over
see.
The face of it.
Okay.
So.
And then do you bury those timbers or you just leave them in there?
They just stay.
Okay.
Yep.
So, but then the concrete. Okay. So then these little button things on the front of that wall, those are the kind of the dead men, or what do you call those?
It's similar to a dead man. We call them tiebacks.
Okay.
The machine there, you can see both of those machines drilling them. They're drilling them back anywhere between 100 and 125 feet into the earth at an angle, as you can see.
Yeah.
And then they put strand wire into the opening and grout it in place. And then they pull on it against that button. That's a pre-stressed cap. And so they pull against that, and that sucks the wall back towards the earth.
And so what's on the other end that is hooking into the earth? Is it kind of some kind of a little
just friction between the grout and the soil?
Okay.
In the hole.
Okay.
Why do they call it a dead man?
Well, that's what I called it. But
a dead man's something similar. It's just a heavy piece of concrete that you tie into at the end. But this is a little bit different. These tiebacks are basically, some people call them a soil nail or a tieback, and it's really just grouted and has friction with the soil.
Okay.
And that's its strength.
And then same thing. This is it's just a humongous. So then what are we seeing? Probably 20 feet.
Yeah, there's three
there.
layers of going down and drilling. I mean, they excavate earth, do a layer, and then excavate more earth and do another layer.
Wow. All right. So, all right. And then this is the beginning of the crane. And talk about the foundation that you guys had to put in to put the crane base on. I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that it's before we poured the foundation for the tower crane. As you can see, there's the anchors that extend down into what will be concrete in the future. You can kind of see some of the formwork going up around it at the base. But before we did all of that, we had the same drilling outfit subcontractor Keller drill 12 micropiles, which are basically just vertical tiebacks straight down into the earth. So there's 12 of those, and then which you can't really see in the picture, but they're down along the surface of the roadway there. And then those go down into the soil about 40-45 feet. Then from there we set this base, as you can see in the picture, and then it was some rebar and about 115 yards of concrete.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
How much does that thing weigh?
the whole thing weighs over 400,000 pounds, just the base, just the concrete
Just
alone.
the base.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys have excavated a humongous amount of dirt. How many yards? Do you have a guess on?
I think it was close to 2,500 yards.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a typical dump truck will hold about 10,
10.
12 yards. Yeah.
So yeah, we were well over 250, maybe even 300 solo truckloads.
Wow.
of
Yeah.
dirt.
And some of that dirt you're storing, I understand, and then it will come back.
Yeah, if it was suitable, we'll try to bring some of it back.
Yeah.
And that is Hampton Paving. They're a local outfit, so
Yeah.
you guys probably know who they are, and
I
they've done a
do.
great job. Corey Gomes is
Yeah.
amazing with what he does. So
Yeah. And we've seen, I mean, I pick Tanya up often for lunch, and we have lunch together, and she works at the hospital. And so we've gotten behind some of those trucks both ways. And so I've been aware of that they're going back and forth. So,
yeah.
All right. And then this is the crane I would have being prepared to be assembled. So, and building the tower for the crane.
Yep.
Yep. And
It's hang in the back of the crane. We call that the counter jib. So that's where the counterweights sit, and so that part's going on in this picture.
wow.
And this all occurred over 2 or 3 days building
Yeah.
the tower crane, and that's them hoisting the final jib, the main boom, into place.
Yeah. Very cool. And talk about what are you going to use? I mean, that crane clearly is, we haven't had one of those. I mean, that's part of what's remarkable is those things normally don't show up in Eastern Oregon. And so,
Sure.
you know, why that big of a crane? What's the need for that?
For a building this size, we need a crane regardless. And so just comes down to a matter of what crane makes the most sense and what's most cost effective and safe for the site. A tower crane in this case made the most sense. Number one, because it's safer than a typical road, just truck mounted crane.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot more versatility. It can reach a lot further. It can pick a lot more weight further out from its center point, its pivot point, than a truck mounted crane can.
And here you're using this. So right here, you're using the crane. This is a concrete bucket. Is
Yep.
that what yeah.
Yep. We call those a garbo bucket. They hold
Okay.
about 2 yards of concrete. And so we were using that in this case to pour some footings that was way out of reach of a concrete truck where it could get, or even a pump truck. So
Yeah.
the tower crane's handy when it comes to that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that as we've looked at that crane, I mean, the reach of it is just crazy. It's able to. So I mean, you have a kind of a staging area down on the central school area, and so then is the crane able to reach down that far to that staging area and bring stuff over, or what?
It doesn't reach quite to our laydown area in the schoolyard, but
Okay.
we have the whole street available to us.
Okay.
The city was gracious enough to let us close that several months ago. And so we've got a lot of room to stage on the roadway that's shut down and pick materials up.
So what? Concrete truck just fills that bucket, and then the bucket opens from the bottom.
Correct. Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, cool stuff. So what's the next step? Where are you guys at in the whole, I mean, what's the next step in the construction process?
What we're really looking forward to in the next month or two is in mid-February is when structural steel arrives. So we're just getting, between now and then, we're getting all the footings done. That whole retaining wall that we've been talking about gets a concrete wall in front of it. So there's quite a bit of activity there to get that complete. All the footings complete, and once that's done, we'll be ready for structural steel. And when it gets here, we'll be using the tower crane, of course, to erect all the structural steel. And once that's all up, they start putting the decking down, and we start forming and pouring slabs for the elevated floors.
So So talk about, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about is some of this steel structure, is it preformed, or are they just, or is each individual piece pre-cut and so then they all fit together? I mean, help us know what that's going to kind of look like.
It's pretty unique. Typical structural steel involves a lot of welding, and they do a lot of prefab no matter what off-site. So when it gets here, it's really close to what it should be. This system is a little bit different. It's unique in the sense that almost everything is a bolted connection rather than a welded connection. So it's a lot faster, and then there's not a lot of welding that has to be done. So safer in that regard too. But it's right now it's being fabricated, and it will be shipped to site, and they'll start in February. And compared to a normal structural steel structure, this is about twice as fast when it gets to site, get it put up.
So from the time that people start seeing the structure be assembled to the time that all of that steel work is done, how long is that going to be?
The main steel, so the main frame of the building will be like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So very quick.
Yeah, very fast.
Yeah. And that's cool. I mean, and I know that I know you guys have a camera kind of up on the point, and you know that'd be very cool to see that.
Yeah, we've got several cameras pointed that are doing time lapse.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to watch it in 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Yep.
How cool will that be? So, and then talk, Jordan, a little bit about, so once you have that structure up, then you said what the floors and everything are actually going to be out of concrete. People might wonder, like, how in the world do you support that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the system's called slab on metal deck. So the first thing that goes in over the top of all the beams is a metal deck. It's like a corrugated shape.
Yeah. So it almost looks like the roof off of the tin off of a
very
roof.
Similar to that. Yeah.
But of course it's much thicker.
Yeah, it's thicker gauge, and so that gets installed over the beams, and we have it gets welded to the beams basically, and then there's some rebar, some light rebar, and then over the top of that gets concrete slab.
Wow.
And it's all tied together into the structural steel at that point.
And so are you going to, will you be pumping that concrete with trucks, or will you be using the crane for that?
We'll probably be using a pump truck. Mostly.
Just because there's so much concrete that's got to go.
Yeah, there's a pretty good quantity for each of those slabs, and we're breaking them up. Each level is 2 pours. So
yeah,
this is too much to do in one day for the whole level. So
you said each level is 2 pours.
Yes. Okay.
Wow. So once, I mean, it'll move pretty quickly then.
Yeah. From there, it'll be structural steel starts in February, and we're projecting that by June we'll be ready to start framing and starting the roof, and so it'll go pretty fast in the springtime.
Wow. So what is the actual construction of the face? So once you have the floor in, then is that a concrete structure too, or is that what is that framing?
It's mostly light gauge framing for the exterior walls, and then on the outside we get a lot of EIFS coat. So that's basically like the plaster coat over the insulation. A lot of that, some metal panels, some nice signage for the hospital, and it's going to look really good.
Cool. Wow. So what's been challenging? I mean, Bouten does a lot of construction. You guys you specialize in medical hospital type stuff is one of the things you guys do. What's kind of been unique about this job?
Well, this job's unique in a couple different ways. The first one being any project that you do on an existing campus is challenging compared to if you're going to go build a brand new hospital in a farm field somewhere, right?
Right.
We do those as well, but anytime you're dealing with an existing facility, it really amps up the level of coordination and just carefulness. Like when we relocated all the utilities and tied them into new utility locations, that was a huge challenge, and a lot of coordination went into that. Also, on this particular site, since the hospital's perched on the hillside,
Right.
That lends itself to a lot of challenges with the geotechnical aspect of the site and building the foundations. You know, the shoring wall was a big part of that. So that's pretty unique to this project and was a challenge, but we're largely through that challenge now. So that's a relief for all of us.
Wow. So Elaine, has there been, as you guys have excavated this 2,500 yards of dirt and done all this, has been like, have you had any surprises? Like, wow, I didn't know that was there. Or
We have, yeah. We're like, wonder what that is.
Right, yeah.
We've ran into conduit, different piping that we don't know if it's live or not, or what was there for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an adventure.
Yeah.
Any cool artifacts or anything cool like that?
No, I don't think so.
Some big rocks.
Big rocks, yeah.
Yeah, I saw.
Because it was originally a dairy. There was a dairy there.
Oh, okay.
And so some of the piping may have been related to that. I know in past projects we ran across like an oil slick where we finally figured out that was where he parked his tractor.
Mm,
You know, so we made sure that there was no oil leaking anywhere. But,
right.
But yeah, we've ran into some interesting things.
Huh. And I saw where, I mean, as I've gone back and forth and picked up Tanya, I saw there's like a gigantic boulder there that you guys had a machine. I would assume you were trying to break it into smaller pieces so you could get it out of there.
Yeah, some of the rocks were so big that the excavator couldn't pick them up.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We had to break them down to get them out of there.
That's when you need some dynamite.
Yeah, those patients in the hospital might not appreciate that.
No,
Yeah.
no,
That's
definitely
true,
not.
right?
So there was a gigantic noise in LeGrand, I think last week. That had nothing to do with you guys, that you know.
We didn't do
Not
that.
I mean,
that can
I
do.
know it
Not
did.
that I can- not
I'm
that I
just,
know
yeah.
of.
We didn't do that.
Yeah. Gary, Chief Gary Bell was here on Tuesday, and we talked about him not knowing. They got a ton of calls not knowing what the source of that was, and I'm just kidding. I knew that was from you, but anyhow. So what are the challenges going forward? Is there anything? I mean, you've gone through the utility switch and all of that. Now, have all of the utilities been switched, or they've been tested?
They're all operational,
Okay.
but some of them are temporary.
Okay.
You know, so we've had to route them in temporarily because the long-term feeds will come in through the new part.
Okay.
And so we had to temp them in, like the gas line is one.
Okay.
And eventually those hookups will be in the new part. So we will have a switch over back
Yeah.
once we're done. So there'll be that challenge again. But
Yeah, it was funny because I was up on the third floor and was looking out at the construction. This was a couple of weeks ago. It was a month ago. And like there's this random first aid kit right on the thing. It's like, what is that first aid kit for? Yeah. And it's like, oh, that's the gas line
yes,
that's running through there.
Yeah.
And I presume it's like, I'll bet there's some code somewhere that's like, yeah, if you have a gas line that's running, you have to have.
yeah. So that's always the challenge is to make sure we meet all codes.
Right. Yeah.
And we do. You'll see lots of temporary scaffolding around that's for safety of the workers.
Right.
And, but yeah, everything's functioning and we just keep going.
That's cool. So Elaine, as you've gotten into this from the project management standpoint, how are you feeling about it? Is it what you expected? Is it more challenging than what you expected, or are you like kind of?
No, it's pretty much as advertised.
Yeah.
You know, we knew there would be challenges. We worked through them with the old site and getting everything in place and keeping no interruptions to our service,
Right.
to the community. But no, it's on track. It's doing what we thought, and we're just internally staying one step ahead of that planning so that we're ready when we have a change outside that affects either traffic flow or something like that. And it's going actually really well. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Jordan, you and I talked briefly just before, and you said one of the challenges was because this project is dynamic, that there's still design elements that are going on.
Mhm.
But I guess I'm presuming that those design elements that affect the basic structure are done. You know?
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
interior spaces and things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
The main structure of the building was designed, 6 months or even further back.
Right.
There's been slight changes to it that we've incorporated, but things like some of the interior build out of the new building is still getting final designed right now.
well, and I mean that you got to build the steel structure and you got to build the floors, and regardless of what's internally,
Mhm.
I guess the only thing that would be dynamic would be the price of the interior stuff that's being added and how to accommodate, get those things ordered and all that
Yeah.
business.
But
Yeah.
even when we're designing inside, we know where the columns are at.
Sure.
We
Yeah,
know
yeah,
where the
right,
ducts
yeah.
are at. So we're designing those finished touches to those spaces around
Yeah.
that existing infrastructure or what will be a existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So recently, the hospital had a water leak in the OR, and an affected, and I was personally affected by that. I was,
dear.
yeah, I
Sorry.
was, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not,
It was what it was.
yeah, it was. I got a call. I got a call at 6 a.m. and like, hey, your surgery today has been postponed. And but I was feeling for you in that moment. I was like, oh, I'll bet Elaine is just like. But I mean, was there anything from that is like, wow, these new ORs, we need to do this? I mean, was there anything from that incident that
That carried forward.
Yeah.
We actually did look back and added a couple of floor drains in a couple of spots that were per code.
Uh-huh.
So I think we added 4 floor drains, just thinking, okay, if this happened again, what would we do?
What would we do? Right. Yeah.
So that was very handily done. And I guess the rest of it was as we put our ORs back together, and the damage was very insignificant, which was grateful because it was found very quickly.
Right.
But for safety, we did shut them down for a couple days
Right.
to make sure everything was up to snuff. But we're like, okay, let's, in the new ORs, this is going to be so nice because it will be mitigated much easier.
Right.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
with us being in a tight quarters where we're at right now, it caused us to think about, yes, this is going to be so much nicer in the future.
Right. And I thought, then that was what I thought about. I was like, when that happened, I thought, I'll bet Elaine will be so glad when when those are not the kind of things that are being risked out there. Yeah.
We were really very fortunate that the repairs were incidental.
Right.
It was very incidental. So that was because we would have hated to put money into those because we still have to have them run for another couple of years.
Right.
So,
right.
but it was incidental. We just, for safety, went through and made sure everything was as we would want it, and we were back in business within a couple of days.
Well, and it highlights the importance of this particular project.
It does,
because people might not think about it. I mean, my daughter works in the OR, and so she's a part of that team, and so on and so forth. And the surgeries that the hospital does is, it's necessary for the public. It's a service for the public, but it's also this huge economic driver for the entire hospital. And so there's so many different, I had a whole bunch of physical therapy appointments that had to be delayed. And so, as I'm kind of experiencing this myself, I'm understanding that, that nursing staff, they had a couple of days off that they weren't planning on.
Right.
Those docs, I just know all this because I'm connected to those docs who had OR time. Their whole schedule really needed to be backfilled with patients that they could see. It's just a humongous thing. But all of that is an economic feeder for the hospital, which is the whole point of this building project. Right. Yeah. Right. And so that, it becomes really,
it was the ripple effect from that was huge. We have, I think everybody knows we have a lot of travelers right now.
Right.
And one of the a lot of the feedback we've heard from those travelers is we've never seen a facility recover so quickly from something like this happening, all the way through getting the ORs back into business to getting you, the patient, back where, scheduled back in.
Yeah.
Because Grand Run Hospital just has this, the employees there are fantastic. The nurses that you said had the days off, a lot of those came back in and helped reprocess things that had been wet and
Right.
re-sterilize them, repackage them. So they worked in that department out of their comfort zone, but they did. They came in, they worked it, and we were less than 5 days down from
Yeah.
start to finish. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, and again, it kind of brings this exclamation mark on then the increased in capacity of ORs
Mhm.
that this facility brings on, that this expansion brings on, then, puts the hospital in a much better economic position down the road. Because if that is a huge part of the feeder, then increasing that capacity then increases the overall position.
Yeah, as I think, Jeremy's done a lot of talks around town with a lot of rural hospitals closing.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to be very diligent and make sure that we're not even anywhere near that type of a situation.
Right.
So you do have to be economically feasible.
Yeah.
And this upgrade in our ORs and the whole serving of the patient that comes in is going to be, it's an economic, but it's also the best thing to do for our patients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Grand Run Hospital is solid. That's one thing that's really nice working here is we have the ability to do a project like this.
Yeah. And it's locally controlled. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. We don't have somebody in an office, back in Philadelphia saying, okay, now you can add these bolts.
Well,
and
and
just look at it. And we do
well, and then the fact, I mean, I'm a big cheerleader for GRH. I mean, they're a great sponsor for us, but beyond that, I mean, I'm just invested in it. My family is invested in it, and so on and so forth. But the likelihood of doing an expansion like this, if we were owned by someone else outside of the area, it just wouldn't happen.
No.
Because the opposite is really happening in those. I mean, if you look at the hospitals on either side of us that are owned by bigger organizations, they're looking to reduce services because it has to pay for itself. It has to make economical sense. And so then you're not going to double down. You're not going to take a risk. They're actually doing the opposite. So all of those things are, us being locally owned and controlled. And at the end of the day, I mean, the hospital's got to pay for itself. I mean, but at the end of the day, they're looking for services that are going to help them be economically alive, but we're trying to serve the patient.
The economics are huge, but the bigger piece is being able to provide services here that you don't have to travel for.
Yep.
And so we try to be very diverse in what does the community need for services, and this project will allow us to even include some more services in the future that we don't have room for now.
Right.
And we will.
Right.
So that was exciting.
And this leak was just a gigantic exclamation mark on, we're doing the right thing. Yeah. So
no, it was an unfortunate, but it happened. A piece of equipment failed and sprung a leak. I mean, it can happen to your washer in your house.
Yeah, that's exactly.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It was just to mitigate it. We made sure we had it well mitigated before we put surgery back in place.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks you guys for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time this morning and
thank you.
And being on the show. And again, just I marvel at what's going up on the side of the hill there and what's happening. And I know that you're employing a lot of local labor. And I know those guys. I mean, I was out there eating lunch the other day, and we were kind of looking over, and somebody comes over and waves at me, and I didn't recognize him until he took off. It's like, oh, I know that guy, and we talked about what he was working on and so on and so forth. So
we always try to bring as much local as we can because the community supports us, so we like to support them.
Yeah. Well, thanks a bunch, and appreciate you being here. And we'll be right back right after that.